Have you ever wondered what gives life meaning? In a world that seems to move faster every day, full of noise and distractions, many of us find ourselves asking the same deep question. What is the purpose of it all? The existentialist philosophers Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus offered answers that, for many, continue to resonate powerfully today. They didn't promise us easy answers, and they certainly didn't offer us a comforting sense of certainty about the world. In this video, we're diving deep into existentialism, exploring the work of Sartre and Camus, two of the most influential thinkers who helped define the philosophy. From Sartre's radical freedom to Camus' rebellion against the absurd, we're about to journey through some of the most thought-provoking ideas ever put to paper. But here's the twist. Their answers may not be what you expect. In fact, these philosophers challenge us to rethink how we live our lives in a world that doesn't give us a clear meaning or roadmap. So, if you're ready to question the world around you and explore the profound lessons these philosophers have for us today, you're in the right place. Trust me, what we'll discuss today will make you see your life and choices in an entirely new light. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends who might be grappling with these same questions, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more thought-provoking content. Also, if you want to support this channel and help keep the conversation going, feel free to donate via the Super Thanks button below. Your support means the world to me. Now, let's jump into the world of Sartre and Camus and start questioning everything. In the aftermath of World War II, the world was left in a state of profound disillusionment. The war, particularly the atrocities of the Holocaust, shattered the previously held beliefs in human progress, rationality, and divine order. People were faced with the stark reality that the world, far from being a place of inherent meaning, seemed indifferent to human suffering and desires. In response to this existential crisis, two thinkers, Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, emerged as key figures in what would later become known as Existentialism, a philosophical movement that aimed to confront the absurdity of life and find meaning in a world that appeared to offer none. Both Sartre and Camus offer distinct, yet intertwined, perspectives on the human condition, focusing on freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning in a seemingly meaningless universe. Existentialism, at its core, begins with the idea that existence precedes essence. In other words, humans are born into the world without any inherent purpose or meaning, and it is up to each individual to create their own essence through their choices and actions. This concept of human freedom, particularly as articulated by Sartre, is both empowering and terrifying. It places the burden of meaning squarely on the shoulders of the individual, suggesting that we are free to choose our path, but also responsible for the consequences of those choices. Jean-Paul Sartre's philosophy of existentialism emphasizes the radical freedom of the individual. According to Sartre, we are condemned to be free. There is no higher authority or preordained meaning to guide us. We are thrown into existence with no purpose, and it is up to us to define ourselves through our actions. Sartre's famous phrase, "Existence precedes essence," encapsulates this idea. It means that humans are not born with a fixed nature or destiny. We create our essence, or identity, through the choices we make. This radical freedom comes with a great deal of responsibility. Sartre argues that we cannot escape the burden of this freedom by blaming our actions on external circumstances or societal pressures. This leads to the concept of bad faith, which Sartre defines as self-deception or living inauthentically. Bad faith occurs when individuals deny their freedom and responsibility by adhering to societal norms or external expectations without questioning them. For example, a person might choose a career path that is socially prestigious, but one that does not bring them personal fulfillment. Instead of acknowledging their own desires and making a choice based on their true self, they simply conform to what is expected of them. Sartre believed that living in bad faith is a form of self-betrayal, as it denies the individual's capacity to define their life and find authentic meaning. Along with the burden of freedom comes the feeling of anguish, which Sartre describes as the emotional and psychological weight of realizing that we are completely responsible for our actions and the world we create. In this view, there is no God or higher power to absolve us of our choices. We are entirely alone in the universe, and our actions are the only things that define us. Sartre's existentialism emphasizes that this anguish should not lead to despair, but rather to a deeper understanding of our capacity for choice and self-determination. It is through embracing our freedom and taking responsibility for our choices that we can find meaning in a world that offers no inherent meaning. In contrast, Albert Camus, while sharing Sartre's concern with the absurdity of existence, offers a different response to this existential crisis. For Camus, the absurd arises from the tension between the human desire for meaning and the universe's indifference. Life seems to demand meaning and coherence, yet the universe offers no answers. The gap between our longing for purpose and the universe's silent indifference creates what Camus calls the absurd. In his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus explores how we should respond to the absurdity of life. Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down each time he nears the top, becomes Camus' symbol for the human condition. Despite the futility of his task, Sisyphus continues to push the boulder, accepting the absurdity of his situation without hope of achieving any ultimate meaning. Camus' response to the absurd is not one of resignation, but rather one of rebellion. Instead of succumbing to despair or nihilism, Camus argues that we must embrace the absurdity of existence and live in defiance of it. This rebellion involves acknowledging that life has no inherent meaning, but still choosing to live it fully and authentically. For Camus, the absurd hero is one who accepts the meaninglessness of life but refuses to be defeated by it. In this sense, the absurd hero creates their own meaning by living with passion and intensity, even though they know it is ultimately futile. Camus' rebellion against the absurd is not a call for political action or revolution, but rather a personal commitment to live fully in the face of existential uncertainty. One key distinction between Sartre and Camus lies in their approach to freedom and responsibility. Sartre, as a committed activist, emphasized the importance of engaging with the world through action. He believed that individuals could create meaning by committing to causes, taking responsibility for social and political issues, and striving to bring about change. Sartre's existentialism is often associated with political engagement, as he saw the individual's freedom as an opportunity to challenge societal norms and fight for justice. His involvement in left-wing politics, particularly Marxism, is an example of how Sartre believed that existentialist thought could serve as a foundation for political action. Camus, on the other hand, took a more cautious approach to political engagement. While he recognized the importance of individual rebellion, he was skeptical of political ideologies and their potential for oppression. In his critique of totalitarianism, Camus argued that both communism and fascism were forms of political violence that sought to impose meaning on a meaningless world. For Camus, the search for meaning should not be subordinated to political or ideological ends. Instead, he believed that true rebellion required a personal commitment to live authentically, without relying on external ideologies to provide meaning. Despite these differences, both Sartre and Camus shared a common view on the absurdity of life and the importance of human freedom. Both thinkers recognized that existence is inherently meaningless and that individuals must create their own meaning through their choices and actions. Sartre's emphasis on action and engagement with the world contrasts with Camus' focus on acceptance and rebellion. But both approaches encourage individuals to face the reality of the absurd and find ways to live authentically in a world that offers no ultimate answers. The legacy of existentialism can be seen in the influence it has had on literature, philosophy, and psychology. Sartre and Camus' ideas have shaped the way we think about freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning. In literature, existential themes can be found in works ranging from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov to Kafka's The Trial and beyond. These writers, like Sartre and Camus, explore the tension between human freedom and the oppressive forces of society, as well as the existential anxiety that arises from confronting the meaninglessness of life. In contemporary culture, existentialism continues to resonate with people who struggle to find meaning in an increasingly chaotic and fragmented world. The rise of consumerism, social media, and the constant bombardment of information can create a sense of existential disillusionment similar to the one that prompted Sartre and Camus to develop their philosophies. Many individuals today, especially younger generations, find themselves grappling with questions of identity, purpose, and belonging in a world that often seems indifferent to their struggles. Existentialism offers a framework for understanding these challenges and provides a way forward. By embracing our freedom, accepting the absurd, and creating our own meaning, we can navigate the complexities of modern life with authenticity and purpose. The impact of existentialism is not limited to philosophy and literature. It has also influenced fields such as psychology, particularly in the development of existential psychotherapy. This form of therapy, pioneered by figures like Viktor Frankl, uses existential principles to help individuals confront the anxiety and despair that arises from the awareness of life's meaninglessness. By focusing on the individual's freedom and responsibility, existential therapy encourages people to take ownership of their lives and find meaning through their actions and relationships. In conclusion, the existential philosophies of Sartre and Camus offer profound insights into the human condition. Both thinkers confronted the absurdity of life and the radical freedom that comes with it. Sartre's emphasis on action and engagement, combined with Camus' focus on rebellion and acceptance, provides two distinct but complementary ways of navigating a world that offers no inherent meaning. Whether through political activism or personal rebellion, both Sartre and Camus urge us to embrace our freedom and live authentically in the face of life's inherent absurdity. Their legacy continues to shape the way we think about freedom, responsibility, and meaning in a world that often seems indifferent to our struggles. The aftermath of World War II ushered in a profound sense of disillusionment, a feeling that swept across the globe and pervaded every aspect of human existence. The war's brutality and the Holocaust, perhaps the most haunting atrocity in human history, shook the very foundations of human thought and belief. The scale of human suffering, loss, and the cruelty displayed during these dark times forced many to reconsider previously held assumptions about the world, the nature of humanity, and the existence of meaning in life. How could such unspeakable acts of violence and inhumanity unfold in a world that had long been believed to have inherent meaning and purpose? How could the idea of a higher power, a moral compass, or an ordered universe withstand such horrors? The disillusionment that followed the war was not just about political structures or the fate of nations. It reached deeper into the core of human existence. For centuries, Western thought had been largely shaped by religious, metaphysical, and philosophical frameworks that provided a sense of purpose and direction. Christianity, in particular, had offered a narrative of creation, redemption, and the afterlife, which was thought to explain the meaning of life and the moral order of the universe. But after the scale of human suffering during the war, such comforting narratives seemed increasingly hollow. People found themselves faced with existential questions that no longer had easy answers, and they began to reject the old systems of meaning that had once provided them with a sense of security. In this intellectual and cultural vacuum, existentialism emerged as a response to the crisis of meaning. This philosophical movement, which gained prominence in the years following World War II, was a direct reaction to the collapse of traditional systems of belief. Existentialism rejected the idea that life's meaning could be found in external structures like religion, society, or government. Instead, existentialist thinkers argued that individuals must create their own meaning through their choices and actions, regardless of the inherent meaninglessness of the universe. Existentialism was not a single unified philosophy, but a diverse movement that spanned different countries and intellectual traditions. Key figures in the existentialist movement included German philosopher Martin Heidegger, Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, and German existentialist Karl Jaspers. Each of these thinkers grappled with the idea of human existence in a world that seemed to offer no inherent meaning. And they each developed their own interpretations of how individuals could navigate this existential crisis. Heidegger, for example, focused on the concept of being, exploring the question of what it means to exist in the world. His work laid the groundwork for existentialism by emphasizing the individual's need to confront their own existence and the finite nature of life. He argued that humans are being toward death, constantly aware of our mortality, and this awareness shapes the way we understand ourselves and our place in the world. Heidegger's work was deeply concerned with the question of authenticity, how individuals could live authentic lives in the face of their inevitable death. Søren Kierkegaard, often considered the father of existentialism, explored themes of anxiety, despair, and the need for faith. Kierkegaard's existentialism was rooted in the belief that individuals must confront their own loneliness and isolation in the world. He argued that the search for meaning could not be found in rational thought alone, but required a leap of faith. Kierkegaard believed that true meaning could only be found through a personal relationship with God, and that individuals must embrace the absurdity of life in order to find authentic meaning. Karl Jaspers, like Heidegger, focused on the idea of human existence, but he also placed a significant emphasis on the relationship between individuals and society. Jaspers saw existentialism as a way to confront the alienation and isolation that many people felt in the modern world. He argued that individuals must face the limitations and constraints of their existence, but they also have the freedom to transcend these limitations through acts of self-transcendence. Jaspers believed that existentialism could help individuals navigate the complexities of modern life and find meaning through their relationship with others and with the world around them. The central theme that united these philosophers was the idea of the search for meaning in a world that seemed devoid of it. They all shared a deep concern with the human condition, particularly the feeling of alienation and disillusionment that accompanied the recognition of life's inherent meaninglessness. This was a radical shift in thinking that rejected the traditional metaphysical and religious explanations for human existence. Instead of looking to external forces or higher powers for meaning, existentialists turned inward, urging individuals to take responsibility for creating their own meaning in a seemingly indifferent world. One of the key ideas that emerged from this movement was the concept of freedom. Existentialists argued that, in the absence of an external moral or metaphysical framework, humans are radically free to make their own choices. This freedom, however, comes with a heavy burden. In a world without inherent meaning, individuals must take full responsibility for their actions and the consequences of those actions. This idea of radical freedom is often associated with the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, whose existentialism emphasized the importance of individual choice and responsibility. Sartre famously said that existence precedes essence, meaning that humans are not born with a fixed nature or purpose. Instead, we are born into a world without meaning, and it is up to each individual to create their own essence through their actions and choices. Sartre's existentialism emphasized the idea that humans are free to define themselves. But this freedom is not without anxiety. The realization that we are responsible for creating our own meaning can be both liberating and terrifying. This idea of freedom is also closely linked to the concept of authenticity. For existentialists, authenticity means living in a way that is true to oneself, rather than conforming to societal expectations or external pressures. Authenticity requires individuals to confront the truth of their own existence, including the awareness of their mortality and the finite nature of life. It is only by embracing this truth that individuals can create their own meaning and live an authentic life. The rise of existentialism was also a response to the cultural and social upheaval that followed the war. The war and its aftermath led many to question the values of modern civilization and the institutions that had previously provided a sense of order and stability. Traditional religious beliefs, once thought to provide answers to the big questions of life, seemed increasingly irrelevant in the face of the atrocities of war. Existentialism, with its emphasis on individual freedom, responsibility, and authenticity, provided an alternative framework for understanding human existence in a chaotic world. The existentialist movement was not just an intellectual response to the war. It was also a cultural response. Existentialist themes found their way into literature, art, and theater, as writers and artists sought to explore the human experience in a world that seemed to offer no clear answers. The works of writers like Samuel Beckett, Albert Camus, and Franz Kafka reflected the existentialist themes of alienation, despair, and the search for meaning in a world without inherent purpose. Albert Camus, in particular, became known for his exploration of the absurd, the tension between the human desire for meaning and the meaningless of a universe. In his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus examines the figure of Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down every time he nears the top. For Camus, Sisyphus represents the human condition. Life is absurd, and there is no ultimate meaning to our existence. Yet, like Sisyphus, we must continue to live and act in defiance of this absurdity. Camus' call for rebellion in the face of the absurd resonated with many people who were grappling with the existential crisis of post-war Europe. In the years following the war, existentialism gained popularity as a way for individuals to confront the uncertainty and disillusionment of the time. It offered a way to make sense of the chaos and suffering that had marked the war and to find meaning in a world that seemed to offer none. The rise of existentialism was not just a philosophical movement. It was a cultural and intellectual response to the profound questions raised by the war, the Holocaust, and the collapse of traditional systems of meaning. In many ways, existentialism represented a rebellion against the old ways of thinking and a call for individuals to take responsibility for creating their own meaning in a world that seemed devoid of it. Jean-Paul Sartre's philosophy revolves around one central, revolutionary idea: existence precedes essence. This statement is both a challenge and an invitation to examine the very nature of human life and its meaning. At its core, Sartre's philosophy is about the radical freedom that each individual possesses to create their own meaning and purpose in a world devoid of any inherent essence or preordained destiny. Sartre proposes that humans are not born with a defined purpose or essence. Rather, it is through our actions and choices that we shape who we are and what our lives will mean. This radical freedom, though empowering, is not without significant burdens and responsibilities. For Sartre, the notion that existence precedes essence suggests that we are thrown into the world without any predetermined nature, purpose, or meaning. Unlike objects or things that are created with a specific function or design in mind, human beings are not born with a clear and fixed essence. We are free to make choices, but this freedom comes with the responsibility of creating meaning for ourselves. The absence of a predetermined essence means that there is no external guide to follow. The world does not provide a blueprint for how to live, and there are no universal truths or moral codes that offer guidance. We are the creators of our own essence, And this realization forces us to face the consequences of our actions. It is through the choices we make, the commitments we take on, and the way we define ourselves in relation to others and to the world that we come to understand who we are. However, this radical freedom also comes with an immense responsibility. The freedom to create one's own life and values is a powerful tool, but it is also an incredibly heavy burden. Sartre argues that we are fully responsible for the direction of our lives, and this responsibility can feel overwhelming at times. It is easy to imagine how the pressure of having to create one's own purpose and navigate through a world that offers no predefined answers could lead to feelings of anxiety, confusion, and alienation. In this way, Sartre challenges us to recognize the weight of freedom in a world without inherent meaning. He does not offer a comforting solution to this burden, but instead urges individuals to fully embrace their freedom, acknowledging the anxiety and uncertainty that comes with it. One of the key ideas in Sartre's Existentialism is the concept of bad faith. Bad faith is the act of deceiving oneself in order to avoid the responsibility that comes with radical freedom. In a sense, bad faith is a form of self-deception or self-betrayal. Sartre uses the example of a woman who is in a relationship but convinces herself that she cannot leave because she has no choice in the matter. Her circumstances dictate her actions. She might tell herself that her life is determined by external forces or that her hands are tied, thus avoiding the difficult responsibility of making a choice. Sartre calls this self-deception bad faith because the woman is denying her freedom and responsibility. By pretending that her life is not in her control, she avoids confronting the discomfort that comes with making difficult, life-altering decisions. Sartre argues that this is a form of living inauthentically, because it denies the truth of human freedom and responsibility. Bad faith is not just a concept that applies to individuals in romantic relationships. It can be seen in many aspects of daily life. For example, people might deceive themselves into thinking they have no power to change their circumstances, be it in their careers, social lives, or personal development. This can manifest in the way people conform to societal expectations or allow themselves to be shaped by external pressures rather than making decisions based on their authentic desires. For instance, a person might stay in a job they despise because they convince themselves that they have no other option. They might rationalize their unhappiness by telling themselves that they need the money or that it is too late to change careers. In doing so, they avoid the responsibility of making a choice that would require them to confront their true desires and take risks. Sartre believed that many people live in bad faith as a way of avoiding the existential burden of freedom. It is often easier to pretend that we are not free, to blame our situation on external factors, or to conform to social norms than to take full responsibility for the decisions we make. This is the essence of bad faith, the refusal to accept one's own freedom and the anxiety that comes with it. By living in bad faith, individuals deceive themselves into believing they are merely objects in the world, subject to forces outside of their control, rather than recognizing that they are free and responsible agents capable of shaping their own lives. Sartre calls this inauthentic existence because it denies the individual's true nature, the fact that they are free to choose, to define themselves, and to create their own meaning. Another central concept in Sartre's existentialism is anguish. Anguish arises from the awareness that we are free to make choices. And with this freedom comes the responsibility for the consequences of those choices. Sartre explains that when we truly realize that we are responsible for everything we do, including the values we choose to live by, it can be a deeply unsettling experience. The awareness of our freedom can create a profound sense of anxiety because it forces us to confront the fact that there is no higher power or external authority to guide us. In the absence of a God, a moral code, or a preordained path, we are left alone to face the consequences of our choices. Anguish is not merely a fleeting feeling of discomfort. It is an existential condition that reflects the weight of our freedom. Sartre argues that we are constantly aware of the possibility of making choices. And with that awareness comes the recognition that we are the architects of our own lives. The realization that we are free to act, to create, and to shape our world can be both liberating and terrifying. This existential anguish is an essential part of Sartre's philosophy because it challenges us to confront the reality of our existence without resorting to self-deception or excuses. It forces us to accept the full weight of our responsibility and to live authentically in the face of uncertainty. For Sartre, anguish is not something to be avoided or feared. Rather, it is something to be embraced. In acknowledging our anguish, we accept the freedom and responsibility that come with being human. We recognize that we are free to make choices and that those choices define us. Sartre's philosophy urges us to confront the anguish of freedom head-on, rather than hiding from it or seeking comfort in external sources of meaning. It is through this confrontation with our anguish that we can begin to live more authentically and more fully. Sartre's philosophy of freedom and responsibility challenges us to rethink the way we approach our lives. It asks us to recognize that we are not merely passive beings who exist within a predetermined structure of meaning. Instead, we are active participants in creating meaning, purpose, and values. Sartre's existentialism insists that we are free to choose our actions, to define our lives, and to take responsibility for the consequences of those choices. But with this freedom comes a heavy burden, one that requires us to confront our own limitations, to face the anxiety that arises from freedom, and to live authentically in a world that offers no inherent meaning. The choice is ours, to live in bad faith and avoid responsibility, or to embrace our freedom and the anguish that comes with it, ultimately creating our own meaning in the process. Sartre's existentialism is not a philosophy of despair, but rather one of liberation. It encourages individuals to take control of their lives, to acknowledge their freedom, and to live authentically. While this freedom can be overwhelming, it also opens up the possibility for personal growth, creativity, and meaning. By accepting the responsibility that comes with freedom, we can begin to live lives that are truly our own, free from the constraints of societal expectations and external judgments. Ultimately, Sartre's philosophy is a call to embrace the human condition in all its complexity, to confront our anguish, and to make meaningful choices in the face of a world that offers no easy answers. Albert Camus, a central figure in the philosophy of existentialism, made significant contributions to the understanding of human existence, particularly through his exploration of the concept of the absurd. For Camus, the absurd arises from the tension between humanity's desire for meaning and purpose, and the universe's inherent indifference. The core idea of the absurd, as Camus presents it, is that human beings long for coherence, for a sense of justice, and for some overarching meaning that explains the chaotic and often inexplicable world around us. Yet, despite this profound longing, the universe itself offers no such answers. The universe is indifferent, a vast expanse that operates without regard to human hopes or desires. This realization that the universe provides no inherent meaning to our lives is what gives rise to what Camus calls the absurd. The absurd is not just a vague philosophical concept for Camus. It is a stark and uncomfortable reality that individuals must confront in their search for purpose. At the heart of this absurdity is the gap between human aspirations for meaning and the silence of the universe. People seek out patterns, purpose, and rational explanations for the events they encounter in life. From seeking moral clarity in times of crisis to longing for a higher power that will provide guidance, humans strive to make sense of the world. However, as Camus points out, the universe remains silent in the face of these desires. The laws of nature, the arbitrary twists of fate, and the randomness of life do not align with the human pursuit of meaning. The result is an overwhelming sense of absurdity, a clash between our yearning for significance and the cold, indifferent universe. This recognition of absurdity is not merely an intellectual realization, but a deeply emotional and existential experience. To come to terms with the absurd is to face the reality that life does not have the answers we seek. In many ways, this is a painful truth that challenges deeply held beliefs about the purpose of existence. For centuries, people have turned to religion, philosophy, or science to find answers to life's ultimate questions. But for Camus, these traditional avenues often fail to provide satisfactory responses. Instead, they tend to offer comforting illusions or false hopes, illusions that the absurd hero must reject. For Camus, the absurd must be confronted head-on, with clear-eyed awareness, without retreating into comforting myths or ideologies. In his most famous work, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus delves into the human response to the absurd. Sisyphus, a figure from Greek mythology, is condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only for the boulder to roll back down each time he nears the top. This eternal, pointless struggle symbolizes the human condition, and Camus uses Sisyphus as a metaphor for the absurdity of life. Just as Sisyphus labors endlessly without any hope of success, so too do humans search for meaning in a world that offers none. The futility of Sisyphus's task mirrors the frustration of the human condition, where no matter how hard we strive, the ultimate questions of existence remain unanswered. However, Camus' interpretation of Sisyphus's plight is not one of despair. On the contrary, he proposes that the very recognition of the absurd provides an opportunity for personal rebellion. Instead of succumbing to despair or nihilism, denying life's worth because it is devoid of inherent meaning, Camus urges us to rebel against the absurd by embracing it. This rebellion does not involve futile attempts to impose meaning on life, nor does it involve seeking some higher purpose that does not exist. Instead, the rebellion is about living fully and authentically, embracing the absurdity of existence, and finding purpose in the act of living itself. To live as an absurd hero, according to Camus, is to recognize that life has no inherent meaning and to act with passion and purpose despite this. The absurd hero does not succumb to the idea that life's meaninglessness makes existence unworthy. On the contrary, by accepting that life is without ultimate answers, the absurd hero creates their own meaning through their actions, relationships, and experiences. It is through the act of living in defiance of the absurd that the individual is able to create meaning, even though that meaning is not handed down from some higher source. The absurd hero does not look for the illusion of permanent answers, but embraces the struggle and accepts the inherent lack of meaning as a starting point for personal freedom. An example of Camus' absurd hero can be seen in the way individuals approach their own lives, particularly in the face of hardship or tragedy. Take, for instance, the experience of grief. When faced with the loss of a loved one, many people might seek comfort in the hope of an afterlife or divine purpose, clinging to religious or philosophical explanations that promise meaning. However, Camus would argue that this reliance on external explanations is a form of evading the absurd. The true rebellion against the absurd in this context would be to face the reality of death without seeking false comfort, to mourn and grieve without pretending that there is a greater cosmic justice at play. By acknowledging the pain and finality of death, individuals can live more fully in the present, finding meaning not in the hope of a future afterlife, but in the richness of the life they are living now. Camus also suggests that rebellion against the absurd does not mean detaching from the world or withdrawing into a state of despair. It is not a form of nihilism where nothing matters at all, but rather a form of active engagement with life. Rebellion involves embracing the absurd and continuing to live with passion and intensity, even though life offers no ultimate answers. This defiance against the absurd is not a call for passivity or disengagement. Rather, It is an invitation to engage more deeply with life, to create meaning through the very act of living. This involves taking responsibility for one's choices, making commitments, and engaging in relationships that are meaningful in the here and now, without clinging to the illusion of ultimate truth. For Camus, the absurd hero embodies a philosophy of living with intention. It is a philosophy that rejects the comforting lies of religion or ideology and instead demands that individuals face the reality of existence head-on. This philosophy encourages people to find beauty in the ordinary, to take joy in the small moments, and to celebrate life in spite of its inherent meaninglessness. It is a rejection of despair and a call to live fully, to embrace the chaos of the world and find meaning through action and connection. Camus' rebellion against the absurd also has political implications. While Camus rejected totalitarian ideologies and dogmatic systems of belief, he advocated for a form of rebellion that was grounded in human dignity and personal freedom. He was deeply critical of systems that imposed meaning on individuals without their consent, whether in the form of political ideologies or religious doctrines. For Camus, true rebellion lay in recognizing the autonomy of the individual and resisting any form of oppression that sought to deny that freedom. This kind of rebellion was not a violent overthrow of systems, but rather an internal commitment to live authentically without surrendering to the pressures of society or the state. In today's world, the concept of rebellion against the absurd remains relevant. Many of the challenges people face today, such as societal pressures, political corruption, environmental crises, and the overwhelming influence of technology, can often lead to feelings of powerlessness and confusion. Camus' philosophy encourages individuals to resist the urge to surrender to despair or to seek false hope in external systems. Instead, it urges people to confront the difficulties of life directly, to create their own meaning, and to embrace the absurdity of existence with grace and defiance. Camus' ideas about the absurd and rebellion invite us to live with intention, to accept the absurdity of life, and to create meaning in our own terms. It is a call to reject the search for definitive answers and to find freedom in the act of living itself. By confronting the absurd and embracing it, we become the architects of our own lives, refusing to be defined by external forces or the illusion of ultimate truths. Instead, we choose to live fully, with passion, purpose, and authenticity in defiance of the absurd. Sartre and Camus, two of the most significant figures in existentialist philosophy, shared some key themes in their approaches to the human condition, but diverged sharply in the ways they believed individuals should respond to the inherent meaninglessness of existence. Both philosophers recognized the radical freedom that humans possess in a world devoid of preordained meaning, and both emphasized the responsibility that comes with this freedom. However, their responses to the absurdity of life were quite different, leading to distinct philosophies about human existence, action, and political engagement. At the heart of both Sartre's and Camus' philosophies is the recognition of what they saw as the absurdity of existence. The universe, as they both perceived it, is indifferent to human desires for meaning, purpose, or coherence. This lack of inherent meaning in the world creates a tension between human aspirations and the silent, uncaring universe. While both Sartre and Camus agreed on the existence of this tension, their philosophies diverged sharply when it came to how individuals should live in a world that offers no definitive answers to the questions of existence. This divergence is most evident in their views on freedom, action, rebellion, and political engagement. Sartre's philosophy revolves around the idea that existence precedes essence. This concept underscores the radical freedom that humans possess to define their own lives and create meaning where none exists. For Sartre, we are not born with a predefined essence or purpose. Rather, we are free to create meaning through our actions and choices. This radical freedom is, for Sartre, both liberating and burdensome. He argues that through our actions, we define ourselves and, in doing so, shape the world around us. Sartre's existentialism is an existential call to action. It urges individuals to take responsibility for their own lives and to actively engage with the world. This active engagement with the world is one of the most critical aspects of Sartre's philosophy. For Sartre, freedom is not a passive state. It is something that must be exercised through constant action. He emphasizes that humans cannot avoid the responsibility that comes with freedom. Instead of shrinking from this responsibility, we must actively shape our essence through the choices we make. Sartre's famous concept of bad faith is rooted in this idea. Bad faith refers to the act of self-deception, where individuals deny their freedom and responsibility by convincing themselves that they have no control over their lives, often by adhering to social norms or external expectations without questioning them. Sartre saw this as an inauthentic way of living, one that avoids the responsibility of freedom by pretending that external forces dictate our choices. For Sartre, true freedom comes from acknowledging that we are the authors of our own lives, and that it is through our actions that we define ourselves. In contrast, Camus' philosophy also begins with the recognition of the absurd, but his response to it differs significantly from Sartre's emphasis on active engagement and action. Camus recognized the absurdity of existence, the conflict between humanity's desire for meaning and the universe's indifference, but he proposed a different way of confronting this reality. Camus' response was not focused on engaging with the world to create meaning, but rather on accepting the absurd and choosing to live authentically in spite of it. For Camus, the rebellion against the absurd is not about changing the world or imposing meaning upon it. Rather, it is about embracing life's inherent meaninglessness and living fully, passionately, and authentically without pretending that meaning can be found where it does not exist. Camus' most famous work, The Myth of Sisyphus, provides a powerful metaphor for his approach to the absurd. In this essay, Camus discusses the mythological figure of Sisyphus, who is condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only for it to roll back down again each time he nears the top. For Camus, Sisyphus embodies the human condition, the endless, repetitive struggle without hope of ultimate success or meaning. Yet, instead of succumbing to despair, Camus suggests that Sisyphus can be seen as an absurd hero. By acknowledging the futility of his task and accepting the absurdity of his situation, Sisyphus finds freedom in the struggle itself. Camus argues that, like Sisyphus, humans must embrace the absurd and choose to live authentically, in defiance of the meaninglessness that the universe imposes. While Sartre emphasizes the importance of actively engaging with the world and shaping one's own essence through action, Camus suggests that we must rebel against the absurd by accepting it. For Camus, the essence of rebellion lies in the decision to live fully despite the lack of ultimate answers. This rebellion does not involve attempting to change the world or to create false meaning where none exists. Instead, it involves living with passion, creating one's own meaning, and embracing the absurd without attempting to find comfort in illusions. For Camus, this rebellion is a form of personal liberation by acknowledging the absurd. We are free to live our lives without the burden of seeking impossible answers. In this way, Camus' philosophy is not a nihilistic retreat into despair. Rather, it is an active engagement with life, but one that is grounded in the recognition that meaning cannot be forced onto existence. One of the most significant differences between Sartre and Camus is their approach to political engagement. Sartre was deeply involved in politics throughout his life, particularly in relation to Marxism, communism, and the fight for social justice. Sartre believed that existentialism could serve as a foundation for political action. He saw the existentialist commitment to freedom and responsibility as directly tied to the collective fate of humanity. Sartre believed that individuals have not only the freedom to define themselves, but also the responsibility to engage with and change the world around them. For Sartre, existentialism is not just a personal philosophy. It is also a political one. He argued that the individual's freedom and responsibility should extend to social and political causes. And he was an outspoken critic of various forms of oppression and injustice. Sartre was actively involved in leftist political movements and supported the causes of revolution, particularly in the context of anti-colonial struggles and the fight against imperialism. Camus, on the other hand, was more cautious about political ideologies, particularly in the wake of World War II. While Sartre embraced the potential of political engagement as a means of realizing existential freedom and social justice, Camus was wary of political movements that could lead to totalitarianism. Camus was critical of both Soviet communism and fascism for their authoritarian tendencies and their suppression of individual freedoms. He rejected the idea that political ideologies, even those that claimed to seek social justice, could provide the answers to the absurdity of existence. For Camus, political engagement had to be grounded in the preservation of personal freedom and dignity. He was a fierce critic of the use of violence and ideological dogma to impose meaning on individuals. Instead of committing to a grand political cause, Camus believed in maintaining personal integrity and resisting ideologies that sought to subjugate the individual to a higher, often oppressive, cause. This tension between Sartre's belief in the political potential of existentialism and Camus' skepticism toward political ideologies highlights a fundamental divergence in their views on how individuals should engage with the world. While Sartre saw political action as a means to realize existential freedom and bring about social change, Camus believed that personal freedom and authenticity were paramount, and that political movements often compromise these values. Sartre's political activism, particularly his involvement with Marxism, led him to embrace the idea that existentialism could be used to support collective movements for justice. Camus, on the other hand, feared that political ideologies, no matter how well-intentioned, could easily lead to authoritarianism and violence, undermining the very freedom they claimed to champion. Despite these differences, both Sartre and Camus were united in their rejection of traditional religious and metaphysical explanations of existence. Both philosophers were deeply skeptical of any belief system that promised easy answers to the questions of life and meaning. They shared a commitment to personal freedom, individual responsibility, and the idea that individuals must confront the absurdity of existence without resorting to comforting illusions. Yet, while Sartre believed that the way to confront the absurdity of life was through active engagement with the world and political action, Camus emphasized the importance of accepting the absurd and living authentically in spite of it, without attempting to impose meaning where none exists. The differences between Sartre and Camus ultimately come down to their contrasting views on the role of action in response to the absurd. Sartre's philosophy is one of active engagement, urging individuals to shape their essence through choices and commitments. Camus, on the other hand, advocates for an acceptance of the absurd and a rebellion against it that does not seek to change the world, but to live fully within it, creating meaning through personal experience. This divergence in their philosophies reflects broader debates within existentialism about the role of action, rebellion, and political engagement in the face of an indifferent universe. While both philosophers made profound contributions to the understanding of human freedom and responsibility, their differing responses to the absurdity of life offer contrasting paths for individuals to navigate the complexities of existence. Existentialism has left an indelible mark on philosophy, literature, psychology, and many other fields, shaping how we approach the most fundamental questions of human existence. At the heart of this philosophical movement lie questions that are as relevant today as they were when thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus first explored them. Who are we? What is the meaning of life? How do we navigate a world that offers no inherent meaning or purpose. These themes, freedom, alienation, responsibility, and the search for meaning, remain central to contemporary discourse and continue to influence the way we understand the human experience. Sartre and Camus, with their distinct approaches to existentialism, each provided powerful frameworks for grappling with the challenges of living in a world that often seems indifferent or hostile to our struggles. In an increasingly secular world, where traditional religious and metaphysical explanations no longer provide a sense of certainty or order, existentialism offers a way to confront the chaos and uncertainty of life. The existentialist framework encourages us to accept the responsibility that comes with radical freedom, to engage with the world authentically, and to create our own meaning in a universe that offers no guarantees. Sartre and Camus both explored how individuals can live meaningfully without resorting to comforting illusions or false hopes. Their ideas, though distinct in some key ways, offer a roadmap for those who find themselves navigating the complexities of freedom, identity, and meaning in a world that seems both vast and indifferent. One of the most profound impacts of existentialism has been its influence on literature. The existential themes of alienation, the search for authenticity, and the recognition of the absurd have found their way into countless literary works across the globe. Writers like Franz Kafka, Samuel Beckett, and Albert Camus himself explored the tension between the individual and the world in ways that captured the existential anxiety and absurdity of human existence. In works like Kafka's The Trial or Beckett's Waiting for Godot, characters grapple with existential questions about their purpose and identity. These works, often marked by a sense of absurdity and futility, illustrate the central existential theme that life does not provide easy answers, and yet the struggle to find meaning continues nonetheless. For example, in Beckett's Waiting for Godot, two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, wait endlessly for a man named Godot, who they believe will bring meaning or salvation to their lives. The play is often seen as a representation of existentialism because of its portrayal of the human condition as one marked by uncertainty, isolation, and the search for meaning. Although the two characters engage in various activities and conversations, they never find any resolution or understanding about their situation. The play captures the absurdity of existence, as the characters are caught in an endless cycle of waiting for something that never arrives. The lack of resolution in Waiting for Godot is a reflection of the existential belief that life's meaning is not given or inherent, but must be created by individuals who are willing to confront the absurdity of existence. Similarly, in Camus' On the Myth of Sisyphus, the absurd hero, Sisyphus, accepts the futility of his task, pushing a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time, and continues his struggle in defiance of the absurd. In this way, Camus' Sisyphus serves as a symbol for the human condition, which is characterized by an endless search for meaning in a world that offers none. The central existential idea in this context is not despair, but a recognition of the futility of the search for ultimate answers, combined with the choice to continue living passionately and authentically in spite of that futility. The themes of existentialism have not only influenced literature, but they have also had a profound impact on the field of psychology. Existential psychology, a branch that arose in the mid-20th century, incorporates many of the ideas of existential philosophers like Sartre and Camus. One of the key contributions of existential psychology is its focus on human freedom and responsibility. Existential therapists emphasize the need for individuals to confront the realities of their existence, including their ultimate freedom to choose their path and the responsibility that comes with that freedom. Existential therapy is grounded in the belief that individuals must take ownership of their lives and choices, rather than relying on external factors or societal norms to determine their actions. In therapy, Individuals are encouraged to confront their anxiety and existential dread not as something to be avoided or suppressed, but as a natural part of the human experience. The therapist works with the individual to help them explore their freedom, responsibility, and the choices they have made in their lives. The goal is not to provide answers, but to empower individuals to live authentically and to create meaning in their lives through their actions and relationships. Existential psychologists often stress the importance of self-reflection, personal growth, and the acceptance of life's inherent uncertainties. One prominent figure in existential psychology is Viktor Frankl, who developed logotherapy, a form of therapy that emphasizes the search for meaning as the central motivator in human life. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, argued that even in the face of extreme suffering and hardship, individuals can find meaning through their experiences. Frankl's ideas are deeply influenced by existentialist thought, particularly the emphasis on personal freedom and the responsibility to create meaning in life. For Frankl, the ability to find meaning in life, even in the most challenging circumstances, is a crucial aspect of human resilience and well-being. In this way, existential psychology offers a practical application of existential philosophy, providing tools for individuals to navigate the complexities of modern life and find meaning in an often chaotic and unpredictable world. In contemporary culture, the themes of existentialism continue to resonate with individuals grappling with questions of freedom, identity, and meaning, whether in literature, film, or everyday conversations. We are constantly confronted with the tension between the human desire for purpose and the reality of a universe that offers no inherent answers. This tension is particularly evident in modern films, books, and art, where characters often struggle to find meaning in a world that seems indifferent to their existence. Take, for example, the film The Truman Show, in which the protagonist, Truman Burbank, discovers that his entire life has been orchestrated as part of a television show. Truman's journey is a reflection of the existential quest for authenticity and self-discovery. He must confront the absurdity of his situation and make the difficult choice to step outside the confines of his artificially constructed world in search of something real. Truman's search for freedom and meaning mirrors the existential struggle of individuals in a world where external forces often shape our identities and limit our choices. The film illustrates the existential themes of freedom, responsibility, and the desire for authenticity in a world that offers no simple answers. Similarly, in the world of social media and the internet, individuals often grapple with questions of identity and meaning. In an age where personal lives are shared and curated online, existential concerns about authenticity, freedom, and the search for purpose have become more pronounced. Many young people today are increasingly aware of the pressures to conform to societal standards and expectations. And existentialism offers a framework for resisting these pressures and creating one's own meaning. The constant bombardment of information and the proliferation of digital identities can create a sense of alienation and disconnection. But existentialism encourages individuals to take ownership of their lives and to resist the urge to live inauthentically. By confronting the absurdity of modern life and embracing their freedom, individuals can find their own path in an increasingly fragmented world. At its core, existentialism provides a framework for understanding the challenges of living in a world that often seems indifferent to our struggles. Sartre and Camus, though differing in their approaches, both provided invaluable insights into how we can navigate the absurdity of existence. Sartre's emphasis on action and engagement with the world, combined with Camus' focus on acceptance and rebellion, offers two distinct paths for confronting life's inherent meaninglessness. Yet both philosophers encourage individuals to embrace their freedom, take responsibility for their lives, and create meaning through their actions, relationships, and experiences. The enduring legacy of existentialism can be seen not only in the continued relevance of Sartre and Camus' ideas in contemporary culture, but also in the ways their work has influenced psychology, literature, film, and art. Existentialism remains a vital philosophical movement, one that continues to offer a powerful lens through which to explore the complexities of human existence and the search for meaning in an often chaotic and indifferent world. In today's increasingly secular, fragmented, and uncertain world, existentialism provides a timeless framework for confronting the most profound questions of life, helping individuals navigate the challenges of freedom, identity, and responsibility in the modern age. Existentialism, as a philosophical movement, fundamentally asks us to confront the absurdity of life, the realization that, in the vastness of the universe, life appears to be meaningless and without inherent purpose. Alongside this confronting reality comes a profound freedom. For the existentialist, this freedom is both liberating and daunting. The freedom to shape one's life, to make choices without the guarantee of ultimate meaning or direction, places a unique burden on the individual. Yet it also offers an opportunity to define life on one's own terms. The challenge, however, is not merely to accept this freedom, but to take full responsibility for it. This responsibility extends beyond individual choices and actions. It includes an awareness of how we affect and are affected by the larger human community, in a world that often seems indifferent to our struggles. Existentialism provides a framework for navigating the chaos and uncertainty of modern life, with all of its information overload, societal pressures, and internal conflicts. As we live in a fast-paced, interconnected world, the existential questions that have long preoccupied philosophers are as pressing as ever. Modern life is marked by a constant stream of information, distractions, and expectations. The digital age, with its never-ending flow of news, social media, and external demands, often creates a sense of overwhelm and confusion. This has led to a culture in which individuals are bombarded with conflicting messages about who they should be, what they should do, and what their lives should mean. There is often little space for reflection or for developing a personal sense of meaning. In this context, the teachings of existentialism, particularly the notions of freedom, choice, and responsibility, become crucial for those who seek to navigate this overwhelming landscape. As someone who has spent years grappling with these questions of meaning and purpose, I find that Camus' idea of rebellion resonates most deeply with me. Rebellion, in Camus' philosophy, is not about physical revolt or violent resistance. It is instead an internal rebellion against the absurdity of existence itself. The absurd arises from the gap between the human desire for meaning and the universe's lack of inherent meaning. For Camus, the essential act of rebellion is acknowledging this absurdity, yet refusing to succumb to despair or nihilism. Rather than surrendering to the idea that life is meaningless and therefore not worth living, rebellion involves fully embracing life as it is, without the promise of ultimate answers or resolutions. There's something profoundly liberating in embracing this perspective. Acknowledging the absurdity of life and choosing to live fully in spite of it offers a sense of freedom that can be both exhilarating and daunting. It's a freedom from the need for ultimate validation or justification from external sources, be it religion, society, or even our own expectations. Instead of waiting for some grand sense of meaning or purpose to arrive, we are encouraged to create meaning in the moments we have. It is not about achieving perfection or fulfilling some grand cosmic plan. It is about finding joy in the small, fleeting moments, whether in the beauty of nature, the warmth of a personal connection, or the satisfaction of a task well done. For instance, consider an individual who spends most of their days working a 9-to-5 job. To this person, the work may seem monotonous, repetitive, and devoid of deeper meaning. They may feel as though they are just another cog in the machine, contributing little to the world beyond their narrow role. In an existential sense, This person may be struggling with the feeling that their life lacks purpose, that their existence is just a series of routine actions without any real significance. This is a common feeling in the modern world, where many people spend the majority of their lives fulfilling obligations and meeting external expectations that feel disconnected from their true desires or sense of self. However, through the lens of Camus' Rebellion, this individual can choose to respond to this absurd situation differently. The key is not to expect life to provide ultimate answers or a higher purpose, but to find meaning in the everyday actions and decisions they make. Instead of resigning themselves to a sense of futility, they can rebel against the notion that life must have some grand, external meaning. This rebellion might manifest in small but significant ways. Perhaps the individual engages with their job in a way that feels authentic to them, finding creative solutions to problems, taking pride in the work they do, or cultivating a sense of connection with their colleagues. Even in a seemingly meaningless task, they can choose to live with intention and purpose, defining the value of their work on their own terms. Additionally, this rebellion can extend beyond the workplace. It might manifest through acts of kindness, creativity, or appreciation for the small moments of beauty in life. The individual could decide to take time to appreciate nature, spend quality time with loved ones, or explore hobbies that bring joy and fulfillment. By focusing on the present and the experiences that bring meaning to their life, they're rebelling against the idea that life must have some grand, predefined purpose. Instead, they create their own meaning, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. In the existential view, this rebellion is not only liberating, but essential to living authentically. Living authentically, in Camus' sense, means choosing to embrace life as it is, with all of its uncertainties, hardships, and absurdities. It is about rejecting the comfort of illusions and false hopes, and instead confronting life's inherent meaninglessness head-on. In this rebellion, there is no false promise of transcendence or ultimate answers. The act of rebellion itself, choosing to live fully and meaningfully despite the absence of an overarching meaning, is the only way to create purpose in an indifferent universe. For many, the modern world can feel overwhelming. With constant access to information, social media, and the pressures of modern life, it can seem as if everyone else has their life figured out, while we are left to navigate a confusing and chaotic landscape. We are bombarded with messages telling us what we should look like, what we should own, what we should aspire to be. These external pressures often lead to feelings of inadequacy, alienation, and confusion. In this context, existentialism provides a powerful antidote. It encourages us to look inward, to take responsibility for our own choices, and to create meaning on our own terms. The existentialist framework emphasizes that we are not bound by the expectations of others or by the demands of society. We are free to choose how we live, what we value, and what we find meaningful. This freedom is both a gift and a burden. It places the responsibility of meaning squarely on our shoulders. But it also allows us to take control of our own lives, to live authentically, and to find fulfillment in our relationships, our work, and our passions. It is not about waiting for meaning to be handed to us, but about taking the opportunity to create our own. As someone who has grappled with these existential questions, I find that the philosophy of rebellion offers a way to reclaim agency in a world that often feels overwhelming. Life, as Camus suggests, may not offer us ultimate answers or a grand sense of purpose. But this does not mean that we are without meaning. The meaning we seek must come from within, from the choices we make, the actions we take, and the relationships we build. Life is a series of moments, and by choosing to live in each of those moments authentically and fully, we rebel against the absurdity of existence. Living this way does not mean ignoring the struggles and hardships of life. In fact, existentialism encourages us to face these challenges head-on, without hiding behind comforting illusions. It asks us to confront the chaos of the world to embrace our freedom and responsibility, and to create meaning in the process. The rebellion is not about changing the world on a grand scale, but about choosing to live fully, to engage with life as it is, and to find joy in the small, fleeting experiences that make life worth living. This rebellion, as Camus would say, is not only a rejection of despair, but a call to live with passion, purpose, and authenticity despite the absurdity that we may face along the way. In embracing Camus' philosophy of rebellion, we open ourselves to the possibility of living a life that is truly our own, shaped by our choices and experiences. By acknowledging the absurdity of existence, we are freed from the pressure to conform to external definitions of success or meaning. Instead, we are empowered to create our own meaning, to live authentically, and to find joy in the process, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. This, ultimately, is the essence of existential rebellion, to live fully and authentically, even in a world that offers no guarantees. Sartre and Camus, two of the most prominent figures in existentialist thought, have undeniably reshaped how we think about life, freedom, and responsibility. Their work, grounded in the belief that life is inherently without meaning, forces us to confront an unsettling truth. Existence does not come with predefined answers, and meaning must be created by the individual. Their philosophies ask us to face the fundamental absurdity of life, where the universe does not offer clear, comforting guidance. Yet, within this recognition of life's inherent meaninglessness lies a powerful invitation to create our own meaning, to make choices with responsibility, and to live fully despite the uncertainty that surrounds us. The themes explored by Sartre and Camus remain deeply relevant in today's world, where we are increasingly faced with the complexities of modern existence, an era defined by overwhelming amounts of information, conflicting societal demands, and an existential crisis that can feel more pressing than ever. Sartre's Existentialism, with its focus on radical freedom and the importance of action, encourages us to recognize that we are free to choose our path, despite the absence of a clear roadmap. For Sartre, this freedom is not a passive state. It is a responsibility that demands active engagement with the world. We are free, but with that freedom comes the weight of creating meaning and defining who we are through our choices and actions. This responsibility can be overwhelming, but Sartre believed that it was also liberating. Through our choices, we have the power to shape our essence, to forge our identity, and to engage in the world around us. Sartre's famous phrase, "Existence precedes essence," encapsulates this idea. We're not born with a set purpose or meaning, but through our actions, we create our essence. Sartre's work thus compels us to take ownership of our lives, to reject the comfort of societal norms that often dictate how we should live, and to live authentically by embracing our inherent freedom. In the face of absurdity, Sartre urges us to recognize that we are the creators of our own meaning. On the other hand, Camus provides a different path to confronting the absurdity of life. While Sartre's existentialism emphasizes action and engagement, Camus proposes that rebellion against the absurd is found not in trying to impose meaning on life, but in accepting life's inherent lack of meaning and choosing to live fully in spite of it. In Camus' philosophy, the absurd arises from the tension between our desire for meaning and the universe's indifference, where Sartre views freedom as a tool to actively shape the world. Camus sees rebellion as a response to the absurd condition we find ourselves in. Camus' rebellion does not involve changing the world, but accepting it as it is and choosing to live authentically, to embrace life without relying on illusions or false hopes. Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus offers a powerful metaphor for this idea of rebellion. Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity only for it to roll back down each time, embodies the human condition in Camus' view, the absurdity of life. Yet, rather than succumbing to despair. Camus argues that Sisyphus can be seen as an absurd hero. His rebellion lies in his acknowledgement of the futility of his task, but also in his refusal to allow this futility to strip him of his ability to live fully. For Camus, rebellion against the absurd is not about finding ultimate meaning or answers, but about continuing to live with passion and purpose in the face of life's inherent meaninglessness. This philosophy resonates deeply in today's world, particularly in an age where many feel overwhelmed by the complexities of modern life. With social media constantly bombarding us with comparisons, expectations, and images of success, it's easy to feel lost or adrift in a world that often seems to offer little guidance or reassurance. In many ways, modern society is characterized by a sense of existential crisis, where individuals struggle to find meaning in a world that offers none by default. Yet, the existential ideas of Sartre and Camus provide a powerful response to this crisis. Rather than waiting for life to provide us with meaning, we must actively create it ourselves. Sartre's notion of freedom and responsibility encourages us to shape our lives according to our own values, while Camus' rebellion against the absurd invites us to live fully in the present, embracing life's imperfections and uncertainties. The overwhelming influx of information and the societal pressure to succeed, achieve, and conform can often lead to feelings of alienation, confusion, and disconnection. The existential crisis, in this context, becomes not just a philosophical problem, but a lived reality for many people today. Sartre's idea that we are responsible for creating meaning through our actions offers a way to address this crisis. In a world where everything seems to be in flux, where values are constantly shifting, and where the noise of modern life drowns out any sense of direction, Sartre's call to embrace our radical freedom becomes all the more relevant. He asks us to acknowledge that while the universe offers no ultimate meaning, we have the power to create our own meaning through the choices we make. In the context of modern work, for instance, many individuals find themselves trapped in monotonous, soul-sucking jobs, questioning the purpose of their labor. The existentialist response to this might not be to seek out the perfect job, but to take responsibility for one's own experience of work. By embracing the freedom to define one's work, even within the confines of a 9-to-5 job, individuals can find meaning in the way they approach their tasks, engage with colleagues, or focus on personal growth. This perspective can transform a seemingly mundane existence into one that is actively shaped by the choices and values that an individual holds dear. This kind of existential freedom is not always about changing the circumstances of one's life, but about choosing to engage with life in a meaningful way. Camus' rebellion, meanwhile, provides a counterpoint to Sartre's action-focused philosophy. Camus does not argue that we must change the world to find meaning, but rather that we should confront the world's meaninglessness head-on and choose to live authentically within it. This rebellion is not one of political action or outward transformation, but an inner rebellion against the idea that life must have some greater purpose. For Camus, the very act of embracing life's inherent absurdity becomes an act of defiance. The individual who rebels against the absurd lives in the present, appreciating the fleeting beauty of life, the small moments of joy, and the relationships that make life meaningful, regardless of whether or not they conform to some grand, cosmic purpose. In this sense, existentialism, as offered by both Sartre and Camus, provides a framework for navigating a world that often seems chaotic and indifferent. The search for meaning is no longer about waiting for external forces to provide it, but about creating it through our actions and our engagement with the world. This approach is profoundly empowering because it places the responsibility for meaning directly in the hands of the individual. We are not passive recipients of meaning. We are active creators of it. In contemporary culture, we continue to wrestle with the tension between the need for purpose and the reality of a universe that offers no clear answers. Whether in our careers, personal relationships, or our broader quest for fulfillment, the existential themes of freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning remain central to our daily struggles. As Sartre and Camus understood, the challenge is not to find external validation or to search for a meaning that the world may never provide, but to face life's uncertainties directly, to live authentically, and to find meaning in the choices we make. For example, the rise of social media platforms has created a new set of existential dilemmas. On the one hand, we have more freedom than ever to express ourselves, share our lives, and connect with others. Yet, this freedom can also lead to feelings of alienation and pressure. Constant comparisons to others and the struggle for external validation often overshadow any internal sense of self-worth. Here, the existential lesson from Sartre and Camus becomes clear. It is not the opinions of others or the external measures of success that define us. Rather, it is our own ability to engage with life on our terms, to make choices that align with our values, and to embrace the freedom to live authentically, free from the constraints of societal expectations. Ultimately, Sartre and Camus remind us that it is our freedom to choose how we engage with the world, how we relate to others, and how we create meaning that defines us. Life, in its absurdity, offers no guarantees or assurances, but it does offer us the power to choose. The struggle is not to find some external sense of meaning, but to embrace the freedom and responsibility that come with being human. The lesson of existentialism, then, is one of empowerment. Embrace your freedom, face the absurdity of life head-on, and live fully in the moment. The choices we make every day ultimately define who we are and the meaning we create in our lives. As we've explored today, Sartre and Camus didn't just present theories, they presented a way of life, one that forces us to face the uncomfortable, even unsettling realities of human existence. Sartre's philosophy teaches us that we are responsible for creating our essence through action and choice. Camus, on the other hand, invites us to rebel against the absurdity of life, not by searching for false meaning, but by living fully and authentically in spite of it. In today's world, these lessons couldn't be more timely. With everything we face, information overload, societal expectations, and the existential struggles that many of us feel in this ever-changing, unpredictable world, Sartre and Camus offer us a path to navigate the chaos. Their philosophies call us to embrace our freedom, take responsibility for our actions, and find meaning in the everyday moments, not some distant, far-off destination. But how do you take these ideas and apply them to your life? The answers lie in the choices you make every day, whether you're dealing with personal struggles, societal pressures, or simply trying to figure out who you are. It's in those moments of choice, rebellion, and self-awareness that you start to truly live authentically. This is the legacy of existentialism. If you found these ideas as fascinating and challenging as I have, don't forget to like this video, share it with anyone who needs a little existential awakening, and subscribe to stay tuned for more deep dives into life's most pressing questions. And remember, your support goes a long way. If you'd like to show extra appreciation for the content, hit that super thanks button. It helps me keep bringing these meaningful conversations to you. Thank you for watching, and as Sartre and Camus would remind us, embrace your freedom, live authentically, and keep questioning the world around you. Because in the end, it's the choices we make that define who we are.